Yo, what's up, big dogs? It's your boy D2 Titans Only, and honestly, I haven't been able to kill any ads, nuke any bosses, or make it through an onslaught without wanting to slam my head through a desk. That all changed when I sat down and started build crafting on my hunter. I want you guys to see this build because I've been having a ton of fun with it, and honestly, I think you guys will love it too. So let's jump right in. The main problem I was running into on my hunter was survivability, so I sat down and thought to myself, they can't kill me if they can't see me, right? So I started to cook.
Let him cook! Let him cook now! Let him cook! I said let him cook!
The build was crafted to survive all types of enemies by activating invisibility non-stop, regenerating health on melee kills, obliterating huge amounts of ads by utilizing destabilizing rounds, and pumping out huge amounts of boss damage due to weaken and cycling our heavy weapon damage correctly. To start off the build, I opted into using the prismatic subclass with the void super, SHADOWSHOT DEADFALL. SHADOWSHOT DEADFALL provides a good amount of damage and a huge debuff for bosses and enemies that it tethers by weakening and suppressing them. For our abilities, we are going to be running Marksman Dodge so we can cycle our damage and instantly reload our weapons when we get into a tight spot. The absolute best in-class hunter jumping ability, Triple Jump. Now this is where things start to get important. Our next ability we want to run is the Void Magnetic Grenade, which is going to give us top tier ad clear and synergize really well with the Fragment Spirit. We'll get into that later in the video. And the last ability we are running is the Strand Melee Threaded Spike, which is going to throw a rope dart that bounces between targets, severing and eventually returning to us, also returning melee energy in the process. And if you hit your melee button again when it returns to you, you actually get a lot more melee energy back. Threaded Spike will also give us great ad clear and regenerate health due to a fragment we are pairing it with later in the build. For my first aspect, I chose to run Stylish Executioner, so anytime I defeat an enemy with a finisher or elemental debuff, I would gain invisibility. Which means we get invisibility anytime we get a melee kill with Threaded Needle due to its sever, and we will also get invisibility anytime we kill a target with volatile rounds or if they are weakened, which we will be using a ton of in our build. For our second aspect, we opted for Threaded Spectre, so that anytime we activate our class ability, it leaves behind a decoy woven from strand and draws attention from nearby combatants, and eventually explodes with threadlings that seek out and attack enemies. Next, for our fragments, I opted for the Faceted Sacrifice so that anytime we have an Arc, Solar, or Void buff and get an ability Final Blow, we will be granted Darkness Transcendence energy. This plays a big part in getting Transcendence really quickly. I also opted for the Faceted Dominance, which allows our Void Grenades to weaken targets. And now, since it is paired with the Stylish Executioner, we will be granted invisibility anytime we get a grenade Final Blow. For the next fragment, I decided to stay on the path of making our grenades extremely important and opted for the Facet of Bravery, which allows our grenade final blows to also grant our void weapons volatile rounds. Facet of Bravery also buffs our strand melee by granting us unraveling rounds anytime we get an empowered melee final blow as well. The next problem I was running into on my hunter with this build was survivability. So I opted for the Facet of Blessing, which allowed any melee final blows to start health regeneration, and any transcendent final blows start health regeneration for nearby allies. And for the final fragment, I locked in the Facet of Defiance, which allows our finisher to create a volatile detonation since we are running SHADOWSHOT Deadfall, making us even more likely to gain invisibility on nearby enemies. Now let's talk about weapon recommendations. For our primary slot, it would be really good to run a strand weapon like Rufus's Fury or the Quicksilver Storm, or even different times so that we can get melee kills and proc unraveling rounds. For the secondary slot, I highly recommend the new Slug Shotgun Scavenger's Fate with destabilizing rounds and dual loader. This thing absolutely nukes ads and kills higher health targets extremely fast, but if you don't have this weapon, you could run the Fire of Blood or another weapon with destabilizing rounds. Destabilizing rounds is really important because it will clear ads like wildfire and help you stay alive by constantly proccing your invisibility. And for the heavy weapon, I like using a dark subclass type grenade launcher like the Caraxes Distress or the Wicked Sister, so that I can use them to gain Transcendence quickly while still being able to use them to do good boss damage. Bait and Switch, Auto-Loading Holster, and Envious Arsenal are all great perks to have on. Now let's talk about our exotic armor piece. Since we are running Prismatic Hunter, the perfect item for this build is the Hunter Exotic Cloak Relative. For the curse on this item, I loved having the Spirit of Inmost Light and the Spirit of the Gear Falcon. Spirit of Endless Light empowers our ability regeneration and pairs really well with Transcendence, so our abilities are literally always off cooldown. And Spirit of the Gear Falcon allows our void weapons to gain volatile rounds after we emerge from being invisible, which means once we gain invisibility and come out of it using a void weapon, we will be instantly invisible again after a void weapon final blow, which is why the Scavenger's Fate is great for this build. For our armor mods on this item, I ran double outreach to increase our melee cooldown anytime we use our class ability, and 1-2 finisher, which allows our finishers to restore our melee energy and consume our armor charges. For our leg armor pieces, I locked in Better Already so that we can regenerate health upon picking up an Orb of Power, and Double Invigoration so that we can regenerate our melee abilities cooldown anytime we pick up an Orb of Power as well. But then for our chest piece, we are using whatever resistance mods that fit the activity we are running, and for our gauntlets we are running Firepower, Heavy-Handed, and Melee Kicks. Firepower is going to create Orbs of Power on Grenade Final Blows, Heavy-Handed is going to create Orbs of Power on Melee Final Blows, and Melee Kickstart is going to consume armor charges after using Empowered Melee and grant us melee energy based on the amount that is consumed. And last but not least, for our helmet armor piece, we are going to be running Double Harmonic Siphon to create Orbs of Power with our Void weapons, and Special Ammo Finder, so we constantly have ammo for our Scavenger's Fate. This can obviously be substituted for a Heavy Ammo Finder as well, but do what fits your build best. For our stat rolls, you want 100 resilience, 100 discipline, and try to keep your mobility and strength at around 40 to 50 if possible, so that you can keep cycling abilities as much as possible. Seasonal artifacts aren't super important for this build, but it will help if you have authorized mods melee for reducing the cost of all melee mods, as well as supernova and kinetic impacts, so that picking up a void breach causes our next source of void damage to create a large weakening pulse, and sustained damage with our heavy grenade launcher emits a shockwave, and it will also stun unstoppable champions. But that's the build, guys. It's a ton of fun, and I hope you all enjoyed as much as I have. Have a wonderful day, and as always, peace!